Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast we've decided to call Informed Dissent. And someday we'll tell you why. And
It's a secret.
it's a secret for now. I'm here with, in order of my screen, Eliza Mondegreen, Corey Cohn, Ben Appel, Jamie Reed. I'm Lisa Sellen Davis. And we're going to talk about what happened. We're going to start by talking about what happened this week at the Supreme Court. Ben, do you want to talk about the rally in front, or
Let's do it. Let's
okay.
go into it. So US v. Skrmetti, right, guys? This is the oral arguments that were being heard by the Supreme Court. The decision likely won't come out until June, but it's they'll decide whether Tennessee's ban on puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for minors can stand. And it will set a great precedent. I think the outcome will be that maybe immediate outcome will be that I think Alabama and Tennessee's bans will be allowed to stand immediately, but then it will set precedent for the rest of the states that are looking to install these bills, and then sends a message to, the Democratic stubborn states that are doubling down on this absolute insanity. So yeah, we went to the rally. There was a big crew of us from the Courage Coalition, Do No Harm. What other organization, Jamie, who was involved? You're muted. Democrats.
A number of feminist organizations. So
Yep.
we are seeing a lot of groups kind of working together on this that maybe historically were a little bit more disparate.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and so, what was cool is we got up at the ass crack of dawn to get there. And so we're walking to the Supreme
cool
Court.
part?
No, what was cool, it was cold, but what was cool was that when I got, I'm walking there and I think, and I wrote this in my Substack, like, oh, God, what am I doing? Like, what is this? What's happening? Why am I here? And then I got there and guess who's there? It's like all gays and lesbians. I mean, it was all gays and lesbians, and I was like, oh, okay, these are my people. And there's Buzz with a billboard that says I desisted, I'm a childhood desister. There's another woman there saying, conversion there, gender affirming care is conversion therapy, and there's all these stop transing the gay kids, and gender affirming care, again, is conversion therapy, etc. And so I was like, wow, okay, I'm in the right place. These are the right people, and this is good. So it felt really good to be there. And it was also not so intimidating because we showed up early, whereas the opposing side hadn't fully rallied yet. It took them a few hours to get their shit together and to get out there. So what that means is that we felt like, okay, here we go. There's really it's not scary. It doesn't seem like it's going to be super volatile, and we'll be okay. And we just got started. The press was there. They were taking a lot of pictures. Derek, our friend Derek, was holding a sign that said puberty blockers equals anti-gay. That got a lot of coverage. But it's just as the day went on, there were speaker after speaker, and Jamie and I both got to speak. I went earlier than Jamie. I went around, I think probably around 8:40, so like 20 to 9. And I gave my speech, and I spoke for maybe 2 minutes and 50 seconds. It was supposed to come in at 3 minutes, and that was perfect. And I was happy that I didn't go long. And I said, what I think and believe and know to be true, and that these non-evidence-based harmful practices must end. And so we were out there till about noon. Jamie spoke around, I want to say maybe 11 or 11,
right
somewhere
around
around. A fantastic speech from Jamie. She was able to go a little bit longer because she had a wonderful thing that I think is being printed or was printed in the Free Press. Is that right?
They
sorry. Should I not say that?
No, that's fine. It was
Okay.
printed out Wednesday. It went out Wednesday. But it was more of a synopsis.
Got it.
Didn't go into the astronaut story that I
Got
told.
Got it. So we got to talk to, and I'll, just wrap up here. Everybody can say things, but we got to talk to the press. I got to talk to, an exciting thing was after I got off the stage, a reporter from the Washington Blade, which is the local, LGBTQ, I think they call themselves, paper, which is a long running gay paper.
Yeah, it's the anti-LGBT queer paper.
Right. They had a reporter there, and he pulled me aside. He had listened to my speech, and he said, I would really like to talk to you. He had previously talked to Jamie and on the phone, And he, I reread him some of my speech. He asked me some questions. We had a really good chat. And then later that day, they published the article. I'm not sure how kosher it is for me to share behind the scenes about that. I think it would be okay.
Well, wasn't the first print, it went out in print and then there was corrections made. I mean, that
Well,
should be part of.
okay, so that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it went out in print. I don't know if that article was in print, but later that day, that night, the article was published and it said, the LGBT Courage Coalition, an anti-trans queer group. And then kind of really there's a lot of typos with my quote, and so I got on the horn with, I texted him and I texted the editors and sent email and said, this is not how I would describe us. First of all, we're not queer.
No.
We are not a queer or.
No.
So please,
CC.
and so I was able to say, look, we're an organization that was co-founded by gay, lesbian, bisexual, and trans people that oppose pediatric gender medicine, which we know to be non-evidence based and harmful to young gay people. And so the editor responded. He said he'll make those corrections, and he used that exact language. And he also took out, the anti-trans queer group to describe any of the groups that were there. That language. So, it was, I'm glad that they made that decision. It was just, people told me, oh, be wary. And I learned my lesson.
That is the first time, Ben, that I have ever heard of an individual like you or a group like Courage Coalition that was painted that way in a gay press issuing a correction. I think that might be a first.
Well, let's make it the first and last time that it needs to happen.
Well, the question of the historic firsts of the day have there were many, because the mainstream narrative was that what was historic about the day was Chase Strangio's appearance before the court. It was a historic day because a transgender lawyer was arguing before the court. But my take was that it was a historic day because it would be, in theory, the first time that general liberal Americans would learn that the objectors were not just right-wingers, though there were plenty of right-wingers there objecting, but lesbians, gays, liberals, and feminists. And for this brief moment, there was a picture on the front page of the Times website and the app that included Ben and others holding a big banner that said Democrats against puberty blockers and stop trans and gay kids. And I thought, well, this has been my goal of the last 4 years, was to open up the conversation to include that and diversify the media narrative. And I felt momentarily this, well, I don't know what I felt, a sense of relief and a bunch of other feelings about, wow, okay, it's happening now. And not exactly as I thought it would. And, but it can't be ignored now. But then the picture came down. They put a normal picture of, queer trans joy or whatnot. And then the article they wrote about in the New York Times about the culture war comes to the Supreme Court didn't mention anything about the diverse coalition objecting to pediatric gender medicine. So
very lazy.
It was a
lazy,
bit of a roller coaster because that was an easy opportunity. You all were front and center there. And I'll just add that
but Lisa, no journalists that I interacted with that day bothered to also ask. Did Ben, were you asked?
I'm sorry?
Were you asked there were so many people taking pictures of us, and there was never a question, who are you, why are you here?
And New York Times reporter did ask me for my name and the spelling of my name and everything. So yes, the photographer that was there The Associated Press asked me
Perfect.
questions and did that. I was interviewed by Hearst Communications. So yeah, that a number of them did.
Well, I walked around to different media outlets and said, you know, an interesting angle for the story is that over there on the pro ban side are all these lesbian, gays, and feminists. You guys should go over there and cover that. And then I had gotten a press pass, so I went inside. The first person I saw when I went inside was Chase Strangio, and I said, "Hey, Chase, Lisa Davis, remember me? We sat down for coffee a few years ago." And Chase said, "I remember." And then I went into the press room and immediately sat down at one of the tables, and the next person over was Aaron Reed, and then the person next to Aaron was Evan Urquhart, or however you say that. And then the woman who Amy Howe, who runs the SCOTUS blog, and a guy from The Economist, and a guy from Vanity Fair. And I did the same thing. I said, "Did you guys see that at the rally, at the pro-ban rally, that there were all these lesbians and gays and feminists? And isn't that an interesting thing to write about?" And
You told that to Aaron Reed.
well, Aaron and Evan were there, but I was addressing the three, the
Mm.
SCOTUS blog,
Okay.
Vanity Fair, and The Economist. And they all dismissed it as anti-trans. And then the woman who writes the SCOTUS blog said, "I can't hear this. I have a trans child."
Oh my God.
I said,
Wow.
"How can you report on this then?" And so that's what it was like inside. It was
Can't hear this. I have a trans child.
Helen Joyce has been right about a lot of things, but maybe nothing more so right than that.
Would
Yeah.
say that. What do you mean, Eliza?
Oh, sorry. When Helen has talked about the way that as soon as this enters someone's family, then it enters their workplace and it stills the like climate of dialogue in their entire workplace
Hmm.
to cater to the parent.
And that the parents will have to and continue to double down because they won't be able to
They have to,
reconcile with the
because they
choices that they
can't.
made for their child.
Yeah, they have to be able to live with it.
One
Right.
of the toughest experiences of homophobia that I have experienced in the past number of years actually occurred in front of the Supreme Court.
Tell us about it.
There was a parent. It looked like she was still wearing her pink, can I say her pink pussy hat from the first Trump? She still had the hat with
Okay.
yeah, okay. I hope she crocheted herself. Mom and a dad had a sign that said, you know, I support my daughter, you know, implying I have a trans daughter. I was just weird. It was like we were locking eyes for a little bit, and I just kind of walked around and I just went up to her and I think I said something like, "Yeah, I noticed your sign. Is your child doing okay? Is your child doing well?"
Mhm.
And she said, "I'm not willing to speak to you." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, you came over. There was a divider." So she had walked over to our side. She was standing there intentionally with the sign and our side. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Did she recognize you?
No, I don't.
Or were you just on the wrong side?
I was just on the wrong side. And I was just like, I just sincerely wanted to know if your child is doing well. It seems like you're here because you care about your kid. And she said, I'm not willing to engage with you. And I was like, okay. But the dad kind of was. And so
Mhm.
I said, this is who I am. I said, I worked in a pediatric gender center. I medically transitioned kids for close to 5 years. I'm really, you know, I'm concerned about these kids. And the dad wanted to engage, and he kind of started asking me some questions. And I could tell he was like, "Wait, you did what?" And at first I don't think he believed me. And I was like, "Oh yeah, explain where I worked, what I did." He would ask me a question. She would tell him, "Stop speaking." And he was like, "I asked her a question. Like we can have a conversation." And the conversation pivoted into, how do you know that a child with gender distress is going to remain having gender distress all the way into adulthood. And I just shared, I said, I had intense gender distress as a young person. I believed that I should have a penis. I didn't understand why I grew breasts. I felt like I was a boy at a young age. I had this really intense gender distress in childhood. The dad seemed engaged, and the woman told me, and I said, I grew up. I said, I clearly grew up, and I happily identify as a lesbian. And she told me, no, you're actually a man. You are hiding, you are burying the fact that you are actually a man underneath this lesbianism. You're a man. And I have never.
Is this you coming out to us? This is really circuitous.
It is.
I have never heard. I've never heard anything like that said before. And I was floored. I said, I gave birth to 2 children and I breastfed them. I am a woman. And she was like, no, you don't understand. You have so deeply buried that you are a man. And a friend of mine was standing next to me, and he said, that is the most homophobic thing I have ever heard in my life. And we didn't know what else. We just walked away. I didn't know what else to say. And she goes, that clearly struck a nerve. And I was like, because it's the most homophobic thing I've ever heard in my life. And I walked away.
Well, and as far as I understand it, Lauren was another friend of ours. There were some similar things said to her and other lesbians there. A trans-identified female who was topless and also like not wearing a shirt and also did not have breasts, so double topless, was saying that Lauren should just transition.
You're just a dyke.
You know you're a dyke. You should transition. You're wearing boys' clothes. Why are you wearing boys' clothes? You should transition. I mean, this is who they are. This is the regressiveness of it, and it's
so deeply homophobic.
I
have not heard the vitriol of homophobia said. I'm sorry, I'm still like slightly in shock. Like a woman who transitioned to be a man calling a masculine lesbian a dyke in front of the Supreme Court, telling her you should just transition because you're wearing boys' clothes.
Well, also now they're not saying you should transition because you have a male gender identity, but because you have male trousers, which is pretty.
Well, we all know that's what a male gender identity is. And this is the side, by the way, that the New York Times is touting as the good side. So they're
the pro-LGBT side.
The pro-LGBT side.
Yeah.
Does no one else see
No, we see it. We see it. But
I'm not a man. Like, how
You're not.
This mom, like, I got it. I walked away and I was like thinking about this for a minute. I realized why she had to hold this view. Because if she actually was able to think for a moment, my child who had dysphoria probably would just grow up to be a gay man, and I have put my child in a pathway to be castrated.
Yeah.
This is the same woman who said she wouldn't engage with you.
Right.
So when she did decide to engage with you, it was to accuse you, and then she didn't stick around to allow you to react to the accusation.
She did stick around, and then Jamie started walking away and saying, and she says, "Oh, clearly I struck a nerve."
I see.
And our friend said, "That's the most homophobic thing I've ever heard." Our friend who, I won't mention, but a friend who is a gay person and who is a detransitioner, who was harmed by these very practices, these treatments. You can't call them treatments.
Yeah.
It's just medical harm.
So she's just projecting her denial on Jamie.
Right. So let's say the arguments went off and in the court, and it'll likely come down on our side in our favor. So we'll just have to wait the many months the insanity was revealed for all to see. It's remarkable how stupid Supreme Court justices are. In general, how stupid people are across the board, how this has just melted people's brains.
Corey's had a couple really good tweets from what's
Absolutely.
going on inside the court.
Well, what I want to keep talking about this, but I feel like there's huge news that just broke, and I think it's really interesting that we had 2 huge days of a lot going on where we're in the, you know, we got visibility. We're kind of breaking this oh, this is a left-right issue narrative, etc. The insanity that is, we're through the looking glass, but you know, people are seeing like, oh, you're nothing but just a pack of cards. Like this is absolute BS. But today, you know, we have Jesse Singal writing in The Economist that Johanna Olson-Kennedy is being sued by a detransitioner who's 20 years old.
Why is that a big deal?
Because, well, are you asking me to explain why I think that's a big deal? Well, okay, so Johanna Olson-Kennedy is one of the leading figures in this movement of pediatric sex trait modification and has doubled down and been just a complete pioneer, particularly in the US. Specifically advocating for less gatekeeping. Jesse Singal writes about this. Ben Ryan wrote a piece about it as well for his Substack. And so, you know, this, oh, I wouldn't send a patient who needed insulin to a therapist before I started treating them. Why would I send, she's a bald-faced liar. And she consistently lies. And she's, I believe on record as saying, yes, there's a video of her saying, you know, yeah, well, you know, kids make choices and they can, you know, if they do get top surgery, they can always get breast later, you know, implying, I guess, reconstructive surgery, even though we all know, or many of us know, and she should know since she's a clinician, that oftentimes there's not enough skin or flesh to be able to actually do an implant, 1, and 2, an implant is not an actual breast, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a big deal because this young woman, Clementine, is 20 now, a college student, I think a dance or theater major, and it was transitioned at 12, given implant puberty blocker in her arm, and then at 14, double mastectomy. And we're really go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to break down, just to make this really clear. Clementine is now 20. The puberty blocker would have been put in 8 years ago. That would have been under SOC 7. So WPATH guidelines SOC 7. The blocker was put in at 12. Cross-sex hormones were started at 13. So WPATH 7 still would have had in the guidelines that 16 would have been the standard for cross-sex hormones, nowhere near 13. So we already, I mean, Corey, like I can see the skepticism. I'm like, yes. I mean,
Oh, it's not skepticism. I was just thinking, I think this is where Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson would say, well, boys tend to start testosterone at 13 also.
But when we're actually, if you're going by guidelines, and I understand all of the criticisms of WPATH, but just from a legal court.
I got it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Keep
I
going.
don't know. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. It was
Okay.
a reference to, we skipped over everything that happened inside the Supreme
Well,
Court.
okay. Also,
back to it.
we should
Let's talk about that then. Let's talk about that.
do that. But also we should tell people you should probably watch these videos and not just listen to us, because Corey is going to make fun of Jamie sometimes through gestures. Nobody's going to know unless you're watching.
Right. You need the visual cues.
Corey, you just need to say out loud, that just went over Jamie's head.
No. It's there's not a better gesture to say this is a joke grenade, and it's for everybody, not just you.
But really,
but what went on inside?
Well,
Lisa, Corey, tell
I
us.
want to hear what
let me ask our friends here, our panel here. Who here has listened to the arguments from start to end?
Almost.
Okay, generally.
Okay, so
All
I'll
right.
mute while you three speak then.
No, not at all. Hey, come back.
Okay, here.
It's worth listening to all of the arguments from start to end, because only observing other people's reactions to the arguments doesn't give you everything that's happening. Especially, I had some hot takes that were maybe reactive. I had to process it a little bit, but there's quite a lot of craziness happening in arguments. So the Solicitor General was up first making her case about how Skrmetti was decided incorrectly by the Sixth Circuit because the Sixth Circuit made a determination that Tennessee's law was legal on the basis of rational
basis.
Rational basis. Yeah, I just said the word basis, and so now on the basis of rational basis. It sounds strange, which basically means that according to the Supreme Court's previous cases, the standard is that because this is something that's setting up an age restriction and it applies equally to both sexes, that the right way of determining whether or not the law has any bearing on the equal protection is on basis of age and not sex. And so this is the whole matter of judgment, which is in front of the Supreme Court. Did the Sixth Circuit decide correctly that rational basis was the correct standard to use? And so the Solicitor General is making the case, no, it's on the basis of sex. And this gave rise to so many bizarre analogies, like, well, if, and this is what I was alluding to before, and this is maybe why it was a joke grenade. There was a hypothetical that Justice Jackson, I think it was, brought up and said, well, if boys can start taking testosterone to deepen their voices, how come girls can't take testosterone?
It does the same thing to both bodies, to girls' bodies and boys' bodies. So,
Is that what she said?
yes.
Yes, and a lot of discussion about like giving, they would say assigned female and assigned male, but we would say boys and girls an equal opportunity to go through a typical male puberty. And the whole time that I was listening with a friend who was a lawyer, I just kept being like, but that's not what happens. And my friend kept saying, but it's not really material to the case.
It's a hypothetical that has no correspondence with reality.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the hypothetical may as well have been, what about children who would like to be animals?
Right.
And the thing is, Ben, you had said, I mean, that this will, first of all, you said our side will win, but I've never been on the side of bans myself or said anything publicly. So when going back to our first episode about what is our side, I don't have I haven't declared that I am pro ban, but I'm definitely pro getting the complicated story into the media.
I'm pro ban. I've been pro ban, and I don't even like the word ban. I think that these are state level restrictions on medical practices gone completely awry.
Right.
But the question is not, can they uphold the bans? The question is it sex discrimination? And if it is, then the burden is on the state to prove that there's a reason to do it. A higher burden is on the state. So it doesn't automatically undo the ban or permanently install the ban. It just affects how hard it is for the state to prove its case back at the lower court. So even when the decision comes, there's still some possible wiggle room. And I just felt like I was sitting in there and I couldn't see. They had put us behind this curtain and these columns. So I was just looking at the back of other people's heads and I couldn't see the justices. And I listened, just feeling like I could not believe what I was hearing. I could not believe that these were the most important minds in our nation, and that this was how they were arguing this, because I would say that the liberal or progressive judges in particular seemed like they had been briefed by the ACLU. Like they did not engage at all with any of the evidence that the conservative judges had clearly considered. They brought up the Cass review, they brought up Sweden and England and Finland, and the Chase Strangio and Elizabeth Proflagar.
Prelager?
What's her last name?
I think it's Prelager.
Prelager.
No, please call her Profligard. It was way better.
Proflagard.
She needs a Pokemon card. Profligard is a Pokemon
Profligard.
card.
I have memory problems, everyone. But you know, I thought they did a good job sort of being on their feet, but they let a lot slip. And at one point, they pressed Chase Strangio about suicide, and Strangio had to admit that suicide is extremely rare. So
Did Chase not also have to admit that this is not an immutable?
no, he or she did not concede
Yeah.
that. The question was, if detransitioners exist, is gender identity immutable? And if there's such a thing as gender fluidity, is it immutable? And Chase's response was, if your gender identity is different than your sex, then transgender identity is immutable because it's still different.
Yeah. What
And
if
that
you're
there's apparently
convinced to what if you're convinced to permanently change your body to try to develop secondary characteristics of the other sex? That's immutable. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, nobody said that in response, but
Well, and
I
then
know.
Elena Kagan, she I heard listened to an exchange between her and the Tennessee lawyer who
Rice.
okay, who
Not
you
a
know,
Pokemon card. Rice does not get a Pokemon card.
okay. Um she was saying that she was talking about how it sounds like, essentially arguing like, it sounds like you're opposed to gender nonconformity, that boys have to be boys and girls have to be girls. I don't think that he responded very well to that argument. I don't think that he, maybe was suited to respond and to kind of argue, actually, no, that this, we're saying the exact opposite, that there's no one way to be a boy and one way to be a girl, and that if someone, diverges from the norm, it does not mean that we have to medicalize them to make them properly fit into our society. And so, Corey, what do you think about that?
Well, he actually, Ben, I don't mean to be contrarian, but he did mention it, but he did it in a very subtle way by saying he conceded, like in their filing, they'd already conceded that the Bostock is still holds. And what he meant by that. So it's a 2020 court case that concerned the gender nonconforming apparel of an employee. And it basically said if women can wear this outfit, men can also wear this outfit. And so by Tennessee saying, yeah, we're not arguing with Bostock, that's actually sort of saying then, yeah, we don't have any problem with gender nonconformity.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. Thank you for that clarification.
But it was really, it's a deep cut.
That was over my head.
Conflating clothes with medicine and sex, right? I mean, it kind of shows you the giant mess. Like, okay, if you're allowed as a male person, if you can't be fired for wearing dresses and makeup to work, then it's the same thing as you should get cross-sex hormones. It feels like it just feels like there aren't any grown-ups.
Well, didn't Sonia Sotomayor also conflate taking an aspirin and that there's risks? No.
Yeah. I'm just like in
Right.
disbelief.
Yes, she conflated that there's risks to any treatment, including the use of aspirin, and and kind of
Yeah.
said that these are the same things.
Yeah, could I add a? I'm sorry, I'm so like this is all in my brain. So
Do it.
in that same exchange where she mentioned that, Jamie, she starts off by going, "Well, what if there's?" I'm doing this from memory. I might have it a little off. Well, what if there's a boy and he doesn't want to grow hair, and there's also a girl and she doesn't want to grow breasts, like the two things
Yeah.
are
Well,
at
you
all in the same
cut your hair,
universe.
like, okay.
And
Can we talk about, oh, go ahead.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
Well, I just wanted to say too, it sounds like what Lisa was saying that Jackson had said and so forth is that these justices, there's no grown-ups, but also that there's still this understanding that I think a lot of Americans have or have not even thought about or really understood or even contemplated that medically engineering an opposite sex puberty is a possibility.
Hmm.
There, when we talk about wrong puberties and protecting kids from wrong puberties and putting them through, when you are when you're blocking the puberty of a young male and then, feeding him estrogen and continuing to block the natural hormone that develops, you are not simulating a female puberty because he
Yeah.
has a male body. You are permanently stunting his growth. You are permanently denying him puberty.
And we have no idea what the long-term effects of that are going to be. Yeah, that was one of the most crazy making parts. And also just like the language that everybody was stumbling over every single time they asked or answered a question. It was just so obvious how it can tie people in knots, where it would be like, even when conservative justices were trying to clarify points about sex and they're using this language about assigned gender, and everybody is getting things convoluted and turned inside out. And it's like, it's really easy to see how we can then lose our way with something like, well, of course, like one of the female boys could go through a male puberty if only the state wouldn't withhold the, puberty blockers and testosterone. It's easy to see how you get lost because like you it just doesn't, the human brain cannot like juggle that much. Okay, this is the real term and this is the term that covers up what that is, and it just doesn't work.
And also that the three progressive judges had come to believe that each person has the fundamental right to select which puberty they go through.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's established that such a right exists, and that the medicine has evolved.
But let's
Yeah.
clarify not which puberty to go through, whether or not one can go through puberty. That's the framework they're operating in. The reality is that they're arguing which kids or parents are making the decision, what kid is allowed to progress through puberty and grow into an adult.
Yeah, and we were also seeing the payoff of the long kind of public relations push to consider a whole wide range of things to be gender affirming care in the courtroom, where it was just like, well, if a boy has some kind of hormonal deficiency, which is a medical problem, and needs testosterone to kind of kickstart puberty, that's gender affirming care. And it's like, no, that's a medical condition. But it has really paid off for them to equate, like dyeing your hair and treating an actual hormonal deficiency with what they're doing.
I think I felt like it represented, if you think about the arguments in the New York Times opinion section, they've gotten crazier and crazier, from it's going through a sex changes, like quitting the sex team, the swim team rather.
Mm-hmm. The sex team.
Lydia Polgreen thing, equating,
Lisa, I'm sorry, the sex team was not offered to me as a club in high school.
Yeah. Well, they have one in
It's actually denied.
and then whatever the said yes and piece was about, you know,
The guessing piece about Putin's Russia, and I had children, and but gay.
Yeah, I had children, but like I transition, but I can understand why people, I don't know. Fertility doesn't matter at the
Right.
same time.
yeah, the arguments are getting more and more desperate, and I
Mhm.
felt like that's what we were seeing at the Supreme Court. And then you have the conservatives who are kind of just trying to understand, but wait, we have all this evidence and we have these systematic reviews, and it just, I just keep coming back to how destabilizing it is when you have to argue that reality exists. You're
Mhm.
just, you're
As a friend of mine says, we are now in the business of arguing that water is wet. It is our job to argue that water is wet.
So we've been on the back foot for a long time trying to make these arguments and trying to separate ourselves from anything rooted in religious objection or connected to a one political side or another, and to calmly say water is wet and sex is real and people are weird, going back to, as always, Nina's quote, and the existence of gender nonconforming people. And I can't tell what it means for this moment when those arguments made it all the way to the Supreme Court. Even if the ruling is 6-3 and they say, no, this isn't sex discrimination, and therefore it'll be easier to uphold the bans, what's the lasting impact of having elevated these terrible ideas?
I mean, can we compare it to the Snopes trial? You know, we can
Oh.
compare it to
Mhm.
creationism versus with, you know, we can compare it to people arguing that the earth is however 6,000 years old, and you know, all of that, the creation story, creationism, that's a close comparison.
So when you're right. I mean, so when Brown Jackson equated it to Loving versus Virginia and said, well, look, they said that wasn't race discrimination because it applied to both races, and we say, and you're saying it's not sex discrimination because it applies to both sexes, therefore insinuating that sex is real and that there are two of them, that you actually, that this is the process by which we get to the point where we can actually say when something is bad and wrong and when something is real. Because we had to argue that you could marry anyone of any race, and that stood. And we had to argue that you can't fire for someone for being gender nonconforming, and that stood. And now we have to argue that sex is real.
Anyone else who was there though present? So Lisa and Ben, who are there present, race I was slightly taken back because some of the trans activists, again, so for people who haven't visually seen, you know, they did set up this barricade in the middle. There was like this zone you couldn't pass. There was these barricades. We definitely were there earlier and bigger, and then their contingent came at 10. But people from that side kept kind of coming over. And one of the things I kept hearing too was people would say things to me like, you're a racist. And I was like, what? Why are we talking about race right now? Like, why did you cross a barricade to come over here and tell me that I look like a racist? Like, what are we why is this part of the conversation? How is this all tied up?
Well, do you know that, or are you asking? Are you curious?
I just was curious. It just was weird. I'm like,
Well,
why
because folks are told, and the folks that are screaming at you that you're racist probably don't even understand this, but where this argument comes from is that you know, the idea of the sex binary is a Western construct. And when they say Western construct, they mean white
Which is not racist.
European. Right. Right. So they say that that exactly, that's just not right. So they're saying that, like, you know, black and brown people experience
Don't know what sex
don't
is,
know what sex is or experience
which
sex
isn't
differently,
racist.
or there's a spectrum, and that white people have really just forced this definition upon the rest of the world, and these poor oppressed people who are just sexless. And God, it's just horrible. And so you're a racist if you're saying that there's males and females, and a very small amount of intersex people who still can be classified as either male or female. It's insane. It's part of a political project. It's part of the broader political project that marries together these, you know, anti-oppression and, you know, I mean, it's intersectional, but it's that's what that is. At root, Jamie, it's communism. At
And
root, it's postmodernism and it's communism, and it's an effort to subvert the norm, and Western institutions, and raise Western civilization as it is to build a socialist utopia.
it was
And
a soft, oh, sorry.
go ahead. Yeah,
I
that's
was
it.
going to say, and it was a software update rolled out to a bunch of people who could not explain where it came from, like Ben just did, if their lives depended on it.
Exactly. So there's
Yeah.
they have no grasp, but it sounds really seductive, and it sounds really, you hear AOC making these talking points. You hear her talking about, when they were talking about a case, I think in male female sports, perhaps, I can't remember which this was specifically, but she mentioned, oh, black and brown people have constantly had their sex questioned, and it's discussed, you know, that's where that argument comes from. It comes from, and so when you see Black, African American, uh, Jamaican, whoever athletes, female, or, you know, potentially female, possibly male, intersex, having their identities questioned, their sexual identities questioned when it comes to fairness in sports. That is like, this is, you know, with Iman Khalif and the boxing, this is a racist targeted attack against black and brown people, because these are white people saying that everyone has to be like this. We are creating this white ideal that all other people must live up to and abide by. This is insane. Okay? It's insane. And this is the entire basis of what happened in the Supreme Court the other day. And everything that these liberal justices are arguing stems from that, whether they know it or not. And this is rooted, so deeply rooted in our academic system, particularly in the Ivy League. And you talk about his credentials, you talk about, these people came up in these, went through the same exact, it's just churns out these ideas and these radicals to different leveling degrees. And nobody can really, folks really can't explain it very well. You have to listen to the people that can explain it, because they say it out loud. And then you listen to them and you realize, oh, this is where this comes from. You're saying, oh, okay. So that's what that is. It's insanity.
Well, as the only anthropologist on this panel, and possibly, am I the only one that's ever lived in Africa for a while on this panel? Yeah, okay. So when I see like Caster Semenya and these athletes, I just see that there was a medical system that they were born into that does not yet have the pre-screening tools that are used in other medical systems to early diagnose these DSDs. There's nothing, there's no like racist component to it. If those kids would have been born in the UK or the United States, they would have just had their DSD diagnosed at the hospital if they were born at the hospital.
Right. That's part of it. I mean,
Right.
you're showing the nuance there in terms of how, you know, there's Yes, there's inequality in terms of wealth inequality, in terms of
Right. I
technological
mean,
inequality, but this is going back even further. This is arguing. This is essentially creation. I mean, it's another kind of form of creationism. You know, it's about ignoring. There's no material reality. There's this effort to reject and deny any kind of science that has been discovered or through and proven, I guess, you know, as much as science can be proven through the use of the scientific method that evolved out of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, which were
so that leads to the
Western
point where inside
projects.
the Supreme Court, we're having them discuss race in this case,
Right.
and outside the Supreme Court, there were ACLU trained observers in yellow vests standing around these trans activists screaming at me that I'm a racist.
Right.
Mhm.
And I
inside the court.
actually asked the ACLU trained person in the yellow vest, I'm like, are you supposed to like intervene? Are you here to like make sure that they don't say stupid things? Because they're saying stupid things right now. Like, what is your role here? Well, they were very like, I don't entirely know what my role is. I'm supposed to like make sure, I think maybe just make sure that they didn't throw a punch at us. Maybe was their role.
Weren't they there to protect their own people from you?
I don't know. But then why would they escort their own people over to come over to a delineated side and scream? There was one activist who's literally screaming, my mother is black and you're not black. I'm like, what are we talking about?
In I guess the beginning of 2023, I went to an ACLU rally in Indianapolis that was related to similar bills, and one of the ACLU minders followed me around, tried to put banners right in front of me so I couldn't record the rally, would walk around and whisper to everybody, "There's a transphobe. Don't talk to, don't talk to me. Don't like stay away." And everybody was like glaring at me, giving me dirty looks. It was like, it's a cult. It's a cult. ACLU rally was like a cult.
Well, we've got to take that word back. We've got to get little
Yeah, we want a cult.
bling necklaces that say transphobe.
We want a cult and we want enough money so that we can have orange vests and be minders and
What do we want? A cult. When do we want it? Now.
in the swag.
we did have a gender critical slumber party. I mean, are we on our way to a cult?
Yeah,
Maybe.
there was a gender critical slumber party. And
Mm.
that reminds me again of how the story could be. Look at the strange bedfellows who were actually bedfellows, because there were 4 or 5 people sleeping in a living room.
Fold out couches, air mattresses. There's
Wait, this
randoms and lesbians and gay men and
Conservatives and liberals and
conservatives and
leftists
liberals
and yeah.
really sounds like the stuff of many an
Well,
autogynophile's fantasy, right?
races.
The slumber party.
It was an multiracial, bipartisan, gender critical slumber party. So so that's what we need on our t-shirts, so that they can't call us names. That's
Well, you had me thinking when you said cult, it's a cult, Corey, right? And I think of my immediate, you say ACLU. Well, my mind goes to Chase Stranger, because Chase Stranger is unwell. I mean, I'm going to say that is an observation. That's what I think. I think this person is very, very unwell. But wasn't there reporting that came out prior to this that the ACLU was thinking about dropping Chase from arguing before the court because Chase was behaving and acting so erratically around this and immaturely? Has that been verified?
no, that was
Is that just rumors?
Yeah, that was a leak. That was a leak to Lior Sapir that he tweeted, but nothing. Clearly,
They double down with Chase, right? But
we don't know about the veracity of that rumor.
right. I mean, it's okay for me to say that I think Chase is a very unwell person, right? I mean, this is,
I guess so.
Yeah, she needs to man up.
yeah.
Why do you think Chase Stranger is unwell?
Well, when I'm thinking about in this terms of, Derek was talking the other day, he's like, gender ideology is such a loaded term. It's so triggering for people. Gender theology is actually more accurate. And I thought,
Like it.
one, my thought was, why the hell haven't I thought of that? One, but
Oh,
two, that's brilliant. So I'm going to use it.
Mhm.
So Derek, thank you for that. But we're talking about cults, we're talking about the ideologies, we're talking about, these are belief systems. And so when I look at Chase, what I mean when I say unwell is regardless, apart from like, the hormonal interventions that Chase has taken and so on, this stubborn dog, she is walking dogma. It's a walking dog. I see a high priest. A uh I see a congregant. I see a cleric when I see Chase
Okay,
arguing.
but in some
That to me, that's not
theology
well,
though, but that there are people that have theological religious belief and they find comfort and strength and peace in
Mhm.
that.
right?
But
But these people don't seem happy. Is that what you're thinking?
yeah,
Yeah, these are distressing beliefs.
these are, well, is it the just is the part of it that's the distressing belief is that at its core you can never become that which what you seek?
That's part of it. I
Oh,
mean,
okay, Corey, help.
yeah.
No, Eliza.
Oh, I mean, I think the whole set of beliefs is distressing. It's like, okay, there's something deeply wrong with me. I can never totally fix it. It's this constantly receding horizon. Everybody who doesn't share my distressing beliefs hates me and wishes that I didn't exist and maybe is going to carry out a genocide. And like the whole pack is just like destroy your mental health in a capsule that you take once a day. It's not the best for people. But I wanted to say, I think we're about to run out of our time with Corey, and we wanted to really, one of our only resolutions so far for our podcast was to end on a non-gender note, and so we probably better.
Wait, can I
Yeah,
say one more thing though? We
I
have
guess so.
2 minutes. Okay. Theology though. Sorry, this theological, if you're wanting to use that, Ben, the theology to it. I also think the part of spiritual belief or theological belief that gives people that peace is that it actually is about ceding control to something outside of oneself. That there is
Mhm.
that you are saying I am powerless and that I don't have the ability or the power to change. Like you cede that. And I think that this belief really tries to put it's all internal you.
I hear what you're saying, and I think I had breakfast with somebody yesterday, and so I won't say her name, but she said, with trans people, I just don't see once people start identifying as trans, they often let go of their religious beliefs entirely, and she said, and I completely understand that because you become God, you are God, you are playing God, you become God, you are God. What do you need God for? Why? So it's a it's a theological, if we're talking about theology and we're talking about God, we're talking about powerlessness, higher power, etc. It's kind of like assuming that role um of the higher power um in a way.
Yeah, I
Okay,
call
you guys opened a huge can of worms in the last 5 minutes
yeah.
that
We'll
we're
have
probably
a
going to have to reopen.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
what she had said, and I thought it was interesting. So that's what you made me think of, Jamie.
we'll have a whole a whole episode.
Well, let's ask too. We want to hear what listeners think, right? So if they have thoughts about theology, gender ideology, gender theology, cult, religion, dogma, all of that, would love to hear it. And also, we
Mhm.
did say we wanted to end on a non-gender note, and also to end with two eventually is asking people if they would like us to hear us talk about certain things. So if they want to,
Mhm.
put ideas for topics, if they're really dying to hear something and they really annoyed that we were so close to talking about something that they needed to us to talk about and we didn't. But what's the non-gender note?
Oh, it's a recommendation for anything at all that you enjoyed.
So
That's not about gender.
Jamie's like, this week?
Yeah, I know. This week, right?
All right. Hey, I got
Mine
it. I
was-
got it.
Okay,
Go ahead. No. Mm-mm.
mine was I it's amazing to me that this is what I listen to have a break from gender, but I listened to the Unabomber podcast. But it was briefly about gender because it turns out that the Unabomber struggled with a lot of anophilia.
You tried though.
Great job, Lisa.
But it was interesting.
Did that go into Ted Kaczynski's background of being psychologically tortured as part of a college experiment?
Yes. Yes.
Who produced this podcast? Or where can I find it?
Apple, I think it's called Project Unabomber. It was an Apple podcast.
It's a good one?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Okay, Corey, what's your non-gender thing?
Well, I have a pretty simple life. So my non-gender thing that I really like is this time of year. Do any of you shop at Aldi? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Does your Aldi have the strange, weird aisle?
It has the strange weird aisle, but this time of year they've got the German candies and cookies and chocolates.
Really?
And oh, they're so good. So Aldi is a German company, so sometimes they have weird stuff on the shelf, weird to us Americans, probably not weird to Germans. But the cookies,
Oh,
so
yeah.
good.
Nobody does Christmas
So
like the
good.
Germans.
Oh yeah.
I think that's where the Christmas tree comes from. But that's also
Yep.
What about you, Eliza? What's your off-gender topic?
Well, I might take yours based on our discussion of podcast names we wanted, but right after Thanksgiving, and so this week I got into listening to back episodes of Prairie Home Companion, which I totally grew up on, and it's been just delightful.
Did you ever see that movie?
I did.
It was just okay, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing like just listening to Prairie Home Companion at home.
But with holidays, I'll see if you can. Oh, you can see a little bit of my
you can see
Christmas
it.
tree
That's great.
there. We did decorate, and it's nice. I wish you could see it all because we have like light up gingerbread houses that we got through QVC. QVC. I'm sorry, that's the
QVC is your thing.
Look, I'm sorry. I love watching QVC. I love how excited they get about these products. And if I were to do anything, it would be. Oh, Corey left. Okay, that was a good timing because I was talking about if I could do anything, I would want to be a QVC host. I would be brilliant at that. I think I would love to just geek out over car chargers and stoneware.
This
bread
seems like a
bakers.
really attainable dream.
I've looked it up. It's actually tricky because there's yeah, it's tricky.
Okay, so my 3 non-gender things in no particular order this week would have been wearing fake eyelashes for the second time in my life.
That's pretty gender though.
Is it? That's just plastic.
That's what the kids say.
Only
Oh,
ladies wear eyelashes, Jamie.
oh, I just thought they
Only
were
girls have long eyelashes. Don't you know that?
it's a weird thing that have plastic glued on my face before going on Fox News.
Is it a requirement to go on Fox Days?
No, they always offer you hair and makeup,
Okay.
which I always say to myself, if people are gonna offer to sit you in a chair and prune over you for like 30 minutes, just say yes. It's like,
Do they give every woman the same hairstyle, that like big blowout? Or do they?
God, did you see the big blowout they gave me on Fox? It was insane.
No.
I thought it looked nice. I didn't see the
I haven't seen
recording.
it.
Oh, I saw you when you got back to the house. I
Yeah,
didn't see.
they did give me a big blowout.
Oh,
I mean, I'm just like, whatever, this is part of the experience. Glue
Yeah.
plastic on my face. Like, cool, let's see what this is.
100%.
I also think non-gender is, please do not let your child grow up to be in their like 30s or 40s and never have tried sushi.
That's a good one.
Would never tried
A
sushi.
friend of ours.
Friend of ours had never tried sushi, and she did exactly what my 2 and 3-year-olds do, which is they pick it up and they chew like the rice off the edge of the paper at
Mhm.
first. I'm like, this is not how you just put the, yeah, you should make sure your children have eaten sushi.
So feed your children sushi, not puberty blockers.
That's it.
Sushi, not puberty blockers.
Maybe
Maybe
not
that should be-
wasabi, but sushi. Roe, she never had eaten, she didn't even know what roe. I stuck roe in her mouth and she was like, what did I just eat? I'm like, you just ate
They're like
fish.
little baby Nemos.
That's what she said.
She said these were like Nemos, baby Nemos. Yeah.
No.
All
let
right.
your
Well,
children
this
have
was
some-
good. This was fun, guys.
Wait,
Any-
Jamie had one more thing, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, the Pink Pony Club
What's that?
song. I'm obsessed with Chappelle.
We had a summer where that was on every
Pink
time.
Pony Club?
Yeah, my kids had a summer of Pink Pony Club. It's good.
Pink Pony Club and Hot to Go. That's been the songs in my car. Yeah.
Good
Right,
deal.
well, everybody should partake of those things.
Thanks for everybody for watching and listening. Please
Yeah.
continue to tune in to Informed Dissent, which I just love. I think that's great title. Thanks, Lisa.
And Ben did want to call it Gender Home Companion. That's why.
That's why we brought up Prairie Home
Realize-
Companion too, because
Prairie Home Companion.
so Jamie had suggested Gender Home Companion, and I really geeked out for that. I was super gay for Gender Home Companion.
Well,
Loved it.
we'll see if we get any feedback on the name.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, if
everybody.
we get a whole bunch of go for Gender Home Companion, maybe we'll
Yeah.
We could,
We'll
yeah, we could transition.
like, oh
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.
God. Bye.